Hello all! Rick here, today looking at a buried aspect of Starfleet's history, its military origins. In Earth's past in Star Trek had its dark moments before the rise to reach the stars, passing through both the Eugenics War and the Third World War, ending in a nuclear winter. It was the events of First Contact on April the 5th, 2063 that ended this. Wow, that's scary. Only 40 years until disappointment. Following this, Earth began the complex process of unifying into a single united planetary government, and this was not a smooth process. While most countries still maintained a military presence, so did the United Earth government. The United Earth emerged around 2130, with states and countries still joining until 2150. While the planet's space agencies converged to form Starfleet, so too did elements of numerous militaries merge together to form the Military Assault Command Operations Corps, known more commonly as the MACOs. The exact dates are still unconfirmed, but it was likely around this time that the MACOs emerged. The Starfleet was leading the way into a new era of exploration, and while certainly one with military structure and training, first and foremost it was a group of scientists and engineers. The tactical division within Starfleet still existed and was responsible for managing elements of defence in space, especially things like the Sol Defence Perimeter and patrol vessels. However, external colonies and independent cargo ships were pretty much on their own. Sure, Starfleet would love to patrol and protect its growing human presence, but the organisation was left behind in the face of the pioneers of mankind as they explored the final frontier. Forget the NX-01 for now. The first explorers into space were independent cargo haulers, operating since at least 2102, and there were people before this to establish those trade routes in the first place. So while Starfleet grew and developed its technology, the act of defending Earth fell to another organisation, the Joint Military. The United Earth Military was made up of several divisions, including intelligence agencies, infantry, vehicular combat, and marines, and so on. The exact structure of the UE military is not revealed, but it seems to incorporate both army and marine branches under one banner, although with the widespread adoption of space travel, they're basically training as Space Marines. Wait, not those ones. We're first introduced to the MACOs in 2153, with General George Casey assigning a detachment of them to the Enterprise NX-01 for its mission into the Delphic Expanse at Captain Archer's request. This was seen as a necessary step, as while the Starfleet personnel had combat training, only the tactical and security divisions received more than the basics, and this was combined with ship operations and starship combat. The MACOs were boots-on-the-ground operatives whose training was exclusively the engagement of hostiles, something expected in the Expanse region. Major J. Hayes and his team were assigned to the Enterprise and instructed to act in tandem with its tactical and security divisions. While the integration was not seamless, it was to become the standard fare for the next decade or so, especially in the face of Romulan aggression. During their time on the Enterprise, the MACOs proved themselves in numerous combat encounters, from rescue operations to improving the training of Starfleet personnel. Most in Starfleet had not signed up for this sort of mission, but all were dedicated to protecting Earth, even before it was truly Starfleet's role. Then the Romulan War happened. Star Trek has not covered this time in canon, but a series of books fill in the blanks, and I have a series covering most of the major lore happenings as part of an early Starfleet series I made some time back. The MACOs were deployed on ground engagements against the Romulans, all of whom were helmeted. Ground engagements were not the Romulans' go-to fare. They preferred to attack from orbit, but on rare occasions, where they wanted something, intel or resources, a ground skirmish was possible. The biggest issue with the MACOs at this time was getting them to where they were needed. Honestly, this must have been frustrating as anything. On the ground, they were effective, but on a starship they were just waiting. While Starfleet was a relatively small organisation, the military was too, and that was being throttled by the need to get soldiers out there, Starfleet being the only way. So, many Starfleet vessels had a pre-assigned team of MACO personnel during the war, as well as acting as troop transports to colony worlds. In ground combat, it was pointed out that the Romulans had superior technology, however, that did not deter the soldiers, who made up for it with tactics and tenacity. But unfortunately, many times the Romulans would simply resort to orbital strikes. MACOs lost lives at Deneva Colony and Berengaria, to name a few. With the close of the Earth-Romulan War, Earth began preparations to formalise the coalition it had built into something more concrete should more threats like the Romulans emerge. This was the United Federation of Planets. Its 4 founding member worlds of Andoria, Earth, Tellar and Vulcan were soon joined by other allied colonies, while many more had established alliances, such as Denobula and Proxima Centauri. Now, in some agencies, such as the Andorians, their military and space exploration operations were already unified into the Andorian Imperial Guard. The Vulcan's High Command technically classified itself as a military organisation, but it made concerted efforts to keep its exploratory and military operations separate. Earth had followed in the Vulcan model, only teaming them together when needed. With the formation of the UFP, Starfleet itself was technically dissolved entirely, and so was the Military Assault Command Operations Corps. This Xindi incident was a threat, but with the Earth just having weathered its first interstellar war, the decision was made to no longer keep the military and Starfleet separate. It might work for the Vulcans, but they've been at it for at least 1,700 years by now. With this more official union of worlds, the 4 founding planets each recruited from their own space organisations and militaries to contribute volunteers towards the UFP's naval presence. Each member retained its own military. Even the United Earth still held on to its United Earth military. However, the MACO branch was removed and converted. In fact, Earth went pretty heavily in on this new venture, contributing the most infrastructure and personnel into the formation of the Federation, and to this day, humans make up the bulk of Starfleet, which is a video for another time. The Vulcan Science Council was not dissolved and absorbed into Starfleet, and the Imperial Guard was not disbanded in favour of it. The Earth Starfleet seems to be the only group that was fully given over to the UFP, followed by the MACO branch of their military. So a new Starfleet was born, one that combined the original Earth Starfleet, specifically the MACO branch of the UE military, and contributed personnel from the other member species. Starfleet, alongside exploration and the establishing of diplomatic ties, would now also be responsible for the protection of Federation space. Or rather, now it would have the training and resources to back up that duty. MACO technology and resources were inventoried and became Starfleet's resources. Its training was combined into the Starfleet Tactical and Security Divisions, and its personnel reassigned. MACO personnel were brought in for evaluation and generally offered a position within Starfleets that equated to their military rank. This might be a bit fuzzy because it's fictional military, but from my understanding, a captain in the military does not equal a captain in the Navy. Colonels were more or less of captain rank. So this conversion was offered alongside numerous training programs designed to impart the role of explorer onto the former soldiers and marines. This was a mixed bag. More often than not, former MACOs were placed into similar roles that they had been abiding in before during the Romulan War, that of shipboard security and assault team specialists. Others embraced the opportunity to open up new fields of study that Starfleet offered, taking on new roles, perhaps even those beyond their wheelhouse. Others, however, internally chafed at their new positions, especially those in higher ranking roles. Balthazar Eddison is a great example, who I'll touch on in a moment. I can understand this from both angles, and it's entirely based on the personality of the former MACO. Someone might be tired of the combat and seeking to do something else. Now suddenly they have the opportunity to study any number of other fields and grow there. On the other hand, someone who only knows how to lead and fight in the military settings might not adapt too well with the comparatively passive Starfleet approach. Unfortunately, then there were others like Eddison, who could not see the peace treaties for the devastation of the Xindi attack and Romulan War. Duty to Earth kept him in Starfleet, transferring his rank to Commander Starship, but in reality he should have taken this opportunity to step away or even transfer to stay with the United Earth military. It's undoubtable that some soldiers probably did refuse their transfers into Starfleet, for their own reasons. Many probably considered their service done and wanted a new life, or to resume an old one. Some might have been too embittered at the idea that the organisation they were a part of was being cannibalised into something that they'd no longer recognised. Some apparently got lost in their new role and went nuts. According to some older apocrypha, there was an attempt to form a Starfleet Marine Corps, which was essentially the MACOs reborn under the Starfleet's umbrella instead, but aside from its existence in the late 23rd century, nothing else is really known about it. Other stories cover the reforming of the MACOs in times of crisis, like in Star Trek Online, but ultimately, by the time Starfleet was as expansive as it is, it already covered so many divisions and duties that this very well could happen, if only as a temporary measure. With so many specialisations by the time of the Starfleet we see, it's probable that there are combat-centric MACO-like divisions. The MACOs existed for 31 years, at most, but alongside Starfleet showed a much-needed step in the unification of the planet. In fact, I would go on to say that Starfleet is remembered more so because the Federation institution shares the name and the look, but without the MACOs, Starfleet would not be the force it is today. Honestly, I think that the United Earth military deserves far more praise than it got because, well, I feel like getting a bunch of different militaries to work together is more impressive than Starfleet. The Military Assault Command operations might have been absorbed into Starfleet, but that's the thing with absorbing something that is often overlooked. It's still there, just disseminated in the larger structure, and one of Starfleet's guiding principles became to defend the Federation. Thanks for watching the history of the MACOs, an interesting addition and part of Starfleet's history. I've been Rick, and see you next time for another lore video. Until then, goodbye.